back to the Grieving Sisters. I'm Jessica, and Liz is out sick, so unfortunately, we hope that she feels better. But we are here with a guest, and I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to this. There was just so many things aligned with this connection. I want to introduce our guest, Judy. Judy, welcome to the Grieving Sisters. Thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking with us and telling us your story. And I can't wait to get into the book. I'm just so excited and so grateful that you're here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing this podcast and getting the word out about sibling loss.
Absolutely. And I think that it's important to, because we're like the forgotten ones. It's almost like stepchildren. Like we're always forgotten about, I feel like. And I just feel that just shining that light on sibling loss here, like we're not worried about our parents. We're not worried about other people who were connected with them. It's just these were our like built-in best friends, right? Or these are people, even if we weren't as close with them as other people are or were or whatever, it was our siblings. We had those connections with them. They took our clothes or they took our stuff, like, so we will always have those memories with them. So I feel like, when Liz and I connected, it was very important to shine that light and bring some, we also bring some joy within the grief to the podcast as well. So I want you to go ahead and tell your story and tell us about, who you are and how you got here, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, so my name is Judy Lipson. I live in Massachusetts, and 44 years ago in 1981, I lost my sister Jane at age 22 in an automobile accident. And 9 years later, in 1990, I lost my 35-year-old sister Margie after a 20-year battle with anorexia and bulimia. So at the time, I was 25 and 33, and just was busy taking care of my family and suppressed the grief for 30 years and just went on a treadmill of life. Was a single mother, raised my daughters. And finally, in 2011, there were just a lot of signs my father was dying that I finally took the time to grieve and went through a complicated grief study, did the work to grieve for my sisters, and founded Celebration of Sisters, an ice skating fundraiser to honor my sisters because we all skated. So it was my way of honoring them in November because that's their birthdays and the anniversary of Jane's death, and just a very challenging time just to have something to focus on. Today, I am the grandmother of 4 beautiful little grandbabies that have brought immense joy to my life, and I'm still skating, I'm writing. Grateful to be here, and I hope in sharing my story, somebody alone will be helped and not be alone in their grief, and we advocate for sibling loss.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I'm so sorry for your loss. Obviously Liz as well, because she was reading your book as well. But and congratulations on your grandbabies because you're a grandma now. Like that's it. Like it's all about the babies now, right? But yeah, you were what caught my attention immediately, we connected on social media. Well, we connected with Allison and then through social media. And as soon as I saw the cover, I was like, ice skating? Okay, first of all, I'm the Tanya Harding and just that whole era. I used to, growing up, I didn't have cable in my house. So when those Olympics came on, that's who we were watching. Listen, all of them. I mean, it got to the point that I was like, I can do this. I couldn't do it. So more could do ice skating. And what was really interesting too, because my mom, she actually grew up in foster care and she used to ice skate. So she had her ice skates and I used to always put them on in the house. And she's like, yeah, it's up the floor. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just putting them on, and just always wanted to do like Nancy Kerrigan. And just that whole era was just phenomenal. So when I saw the skates, I was like, all right, this is my girl. Judy's my girl. We got to talk about this. And the fact that your song was I Will Always Love You as your first of all, we are the biggest Whitney Houston fan. We talked about Whitney until like her name has fell off. Like we just talk so much about her. So the fact that you had those two things, I was like, oh, we're totally aligned. We totally need to talk. I'm so like excited to kind of dive deeper into this and into your book. Um, how long did it take you to write the book? Like, because obviously you were still pretty much grieving at the time that you were writing.
So, um, it's a hard question to answer, actually. So I had been writing articles started in 2015, and in 2018, I left work to actually sit down and write the book. And the day I quit work, I actually fell on the ice and had a concussion. And
Come
so
on.
I couldn't watch television. I couldn't watch TV. All I could do was listen to podcasts. So through podcasts is how I found a memoir coach.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
um, so it took I had a lot of help because I
Sure.
never was, quote, writer, an author. So, and then it was published in 2021.
Amazing.
So
Amazing. How do you like what does grief look like when it's been buried for decades? And I think that that was such an important question to ask you because that's delayed grief. And so how did it look like when it was coming up for you?
that's a tough question to answer. So, I think part of the reason why I had suppressed the grief for so long is I was young. I didn't know what grief was. And also, mm, probably a lot of post traumatic stress from Margie's illness.
Mm,
So I was experiencing grief, but not knowing it. Like it would hit me and I would burst into tears, I think, like all of us do. So, in some ways, it was like being a newly bereaved, but yet I had years of grieving and not really knowing it.
right.
So, I went through a complicated grief, which now they call prolonged grief study, which was intense um, therapy. And it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but probably the greatest gift I had ever given myself. But what it allowed me to do was my parents, it was too hard for them to talk about my sister. So they didn't talk about my sister. So, and somebody had said to me, you're going to forget about your sisters. So that coupled with I had lost so many memories and that haunted me. So by going through the set therapy, more and more memories came back. And also, I had put up walls and didn't let people in because I didn't talk about my sisters. So it kind of, I opened up my heart and let the walls down and let people in is
Right.
also what it is, was very hard, but it was also very empowering, very challenging, but healing. And then I started the fundraiser.
And you feel free. You felt free.
More open. Yeah.
More open. Yeah. And I mean, when I mean, yeah, definitely more open, more free, like just now you're able to talk about it. Now you're able to kind of put into words how you're feeling when it comes to your sisters and putting them like basically on the map and letting us know like this is who Jane was, these are my siblings. These are people who really mattered to me.
And I'm also able to feel. So
Yeah.
if I need a day to cry, I can cry. And I can also talk about my sisters and share my sisters because we never lose them. They're always with us, right?
Mhm. Yes. And a lot of people don't know that. Why do you think people, kind of delay it or like so many people just avoid it?
Well, grief has no timeline. And I think that everybody's journey is unique. And I
Mhm.
think that for whatever reason, people just aren't ready at whatever time they need to do it, what's ever right for them. Some people may not understand what grief is and that they're grieving, and they may not have the support, they may not have the compassion. They're taking, especially as siblings, we end up taking care of our parents, we end up taking care of other family members, and maybe not having somebody to talk about, because even siblings amongst the same family, sometimes you're grieving differently and
Right.
everybody grieves differently. So if you don't have somebody that you can talk to or share this with, it can be very lonely
Right.
and not understanding it. So I think that's why people put it off and they're just not ready. And when they're ready, there's no timeline. Whenever they're ready, they'll do it.
Right. I also think that it's because it's so painful, right? Like you said, your parents didn't speak about them. I always, and Liz and I, we countlessly, we say like, no parent should ever have to bury their child. Doesn't,
Right.
doesn't matter, ill, accident, tragic, whatever. Just it's not natural. And I always say that it's not natural. It's not the circle of life, the way that, you're supposed to bury your parents. Like that's natural. Like, but I feel when it comes to sibling loss and especially tragically, I feel for your parents because I understand them not talking about it, and I totally, it's like one of those things that you just like you respect it. Okay, they don't want to talk about it, but if you're gonna talk about it, then like you do it on your own kind of deal. But it's really hard for that. So can you let our audience know too, like how did skating reconnect you with your sisters? Like how did that reconnection start?
Okay. I just wanted to add one more thing to it. The other
Sure.
thing, I also too, I didn't believe it was real for a long, like,
Mm.
how could this isn't real? Like,
Right.
you know, um, so skating is, something the three of us all did
Right.
as girls. We didn't compete or anything like that, but we all skated recreationally. We took lessons, and it was just something that was fun that we all did. My sisters were fun. They were the extroverts. I was the introvert,
Right. Yeah.
and it was something that we all did together. And it was one memory that I always had.
Mhm.
And somehow, when I was going through the hardest of the grieving, skating was the one thing that I could have fun and clear my head. And I always felt like my sisters were kind of with me. So when I wanted to honor them, I felt like I wanted to do something fun because they were fun. And just
Right.
skating just seemed like it was the natural evolution for me to do it with them.
Sure. Well, of course, and then the fact that this is something that you 3 did together, I mean, why not continue and especially now you came up with a nonprofit as well, which we'll go into and, obviously you can let our guests know on, like, how they can find you and stuff like that towards the end of the episode. But I did wanna get into the book too with also, kinda just talking about so one of the things that I was, like, taking notes about, um, when you had grief in the workplace, I thought that that was when I read that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, we did an episode about grieving in the workplace and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and just how they don't give you enough time to grieve." And one of our guests, a couple more episodes in, she said she was like, "Did you know that you get more time off for jury duty than grief?" And I was just like, I never looked at the timeline on that, but she was absolutely right. You get more time off for jury duty versus grieving. And, when you had wrote that about like your tyrant boss, I was like, oh man, I felt this. I felt this. I felt this a lot, like in the depths of my soul, because um, people just don't understand. And I think it's because it hasn't happened to them. They don't understand. But I think also having that empathy, and it's very hard for bosses to be, you have a leader and you have a boss. And I feel like the leaders are the ones that are the most empathetic. Boss, they're just, they gotta tell you what to do and, all this good stuff in between. So I'm sorry that you had to go through with that, especially, at the time of your loss. Um, but I wanted to share that with you that we did have an episode about grief in the workplace. Not sure if you were able to catch it.
Yes. And I think, don't forget, that was 1981. It was a long time ago.
Sure.
And I think more and more organizations are working towards that. I serve on the board of the Cope Foundation, and they have a program, and another woman that I've met through all of this grief organization. So I think today people are trying to establish some programs in the workplace,
Or
grief in the workplace, which is a good thing going forward.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that because I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were working on it. I was in the education field, and when my brother passed, excuse me, it was um people were understanding, but it was like, okay, well, she's back to work, so now back to the same routine, and it's like, whoa, like I can barely even get sift through the stack of papers, let alone have me doing other things. So I definitely like kind of like felt you on that. Um, I did want to ask you, did you save all her notes? Jane's notes.
Which
Jane, because there was a
her
part in the
courage.
book, her cards. Yeah, yeah. I called them notes.
Oh yes, yes. I don't have I do. I still have them, yes,
Oh, I love
with her
that.
handwriting. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's so.
Margie's I was so grateful because mm, there wasn't much. And I do have the letters from Margie and I have the cards. I have all our 33s with the neon stickers on them. So I do. I have Margie's desk chair. Yeah. So I do have some things. Yeah.
Yeah, because we actually just our latest episode that's out now, we talk about, how to declutter and like what do you keep, what don't you keep, and I think like just certain momentums are really special. And I do actually have birthday cards of my dad and from my dad and birthday cards from my brother, like with their handwriting still on it. Like I'll go back to it from time to time, but then it's like, and then I also have all my aunts, and like my one aunt was a teacher and she had this beautiful handwriting. So I definitely like I definitely felt connected with you with that because, I always think handwriting is so personal, and I think it's such it's a beautiful craft. And especially when it's like scripture too, like when they're writing in penmanship, I'm like, I love this. It's art, you know? But I'm glad that you did save that. You talked about letting go of judgment and negative thoughts and belief systems. How are you able to do that?
It's not easy.
I bet.
It's a lot of work. And I think, my parents, despite everything, they never were like, woe is me. I think they really did, you know, despite all the tragedies and challenges they've been through, I think that set us up for being role models. And I think that always trying to, look for hope and look for good and, move forward as best we can. And unfortunately, Margie got sick when I was 14 years old. So I kind of
Mhm.
learned that, life deals you a lot of curveballs and you kind of have to do the best you can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and it's interesting that you say that because, it's very hard when you to get out of those negative thoughts, especially when you're in the middle of grieving, like especially like Margie, like it was a sickness and you're watching. So it's almost, it's when you're also grieving that, right? Because she's sick. So it's like, what person am I going to get today? What person am I going to get tomorrow? So you're also grieving that person that was.
Right. And I also was so busy,
Yeah.
worrying about taking care of my parents. I was a single mother. I was working, I really didn't have time to woe is me or I just had to keep going.
Right.
I was on a treadmill going, 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 going. So I really didn't have much time to think either. I just kept
Right.
moving.
Yeah. Um, when you on one of the chapters that you had wrote that you made a decision to marry. It really reminded me. We had an episode that we talked about trauma bond, and we talked about it was when Carmen Electra she had lost her mom and she married Dennis Rodman, obviously early '90s, and she talked about it pretty well in depth. And I feel like it was in a few interviews that she was just kind of like, you know, she was just trying to fulfill that love, that emptiness of love like she was looking for. So we kind of talked about them as a couple in the Trauma Bod episode. Did you feel like when you did marry, do you feel like, because obviously the death happened as well. It was like a lot of stuff happening at once.
Yeah, and I think so. And he had been my friend and had kind of been there, right after Jane died. And I think my head might have not been screwed on as well as it could have been the
Sure.
decision making process. So I think all of the above. So would I have made that choice if circumstances hadn't? You woulda, you shoulda, you coulda.
Right, right,
Probably.
right, right, right. Absolutely.
I think um, my sister's death and being grieving, probably the choice I probably would not have made.
Right. But you have your children and then you have grandchildren. You got
Right. I
grandbabies
have
now.
two beautiful daughters,
Yes.
exactly.
So the blessings come out.
Like,
Now, what did it feel like when you finally allowed yourself to grieve?
um, I was, mm, I felt like a huge burden had been lifted. I felt those walls had come down. I felt that I'm such a private, shy, introverted person, and to be able to share my sisters, and I have met such wonderful people. And the hardest piece was to forgive myself for not doing it sooner. And
Mm,
that was um, a big piece. And I think, um, and with the regrets, and I think I've had to work really hard on it. And I think a piece of me will never forgive myself. But I have to say that hopefully I did the best I could at the time. And, but I'm so grateful that I eventually did. But I was so, my heart was so closed. I think my heart opened, and now Margie and Jane are truly back in my life and so much a part of me. And that's the greatest gift.
absolutely. Do you in another page you had talked about grief for more deeper meaning of spiritual death. Can we talk a little bit about that? What did you mean by that?
Um, I meant that I could feel more. Like I
Mm,
was so closed off. Like if I needed to cry or if I felt sad, like being able to really feel it in my soul
yeah.
and really feel my sisters, not go through the motions, but
Mm,
really live.
yeah. Yeah.
I was constantly going at a fast pace through life, like really embracing everything more deeply.
Yeah. I can feel that. Did you have you ever received any signs or any, how they say like dimes or feathers or anything? Have you ever received any signs from your sister?
Well, I did, as a matter of fact. I never could go to the cemetery.
Mm,
It was just a thing. I just could never go. And as part of the therapy, the complicated therapy, said they encouraged me to go.
mm,
And I went, and you can imagine how wound up I was going and anxious and crying and whatever. And I got lost finding we have, they're not above ground, they're in the ground, just plaques. And I got lost, and I had, yellow roses for Jane because that was her color room, pink roses for Margie. And I couldn't get the urn turned up to get the water in, to get the roses in. And by this time, it was a cloudy day.
mm,
As soon as I put the flowers in, the sun came up.
mm. Wow.
I believe that was a sign.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, thank you. Thank you for coming. And wow,
Right.
that's amazing. And I love that you did the colors, their favorite colors too, because of the colors of the room. That's really sweet. And they were just saying like, thank you. That's amazing. I just love things like that because I feel like we're always still kind of what you said earlier, like they're always still here with you, but and we're always connected to them in some way, shape, or form. It's just it's energy, they're just not here in the physical form.
But they're always with us. And I think
Yes.
that was the hardest thing for me, you know. And I think that was the complication with my suppressing it too, is like, what is this?
Right.
Just because they're gone, but they're here, they're with me. And I think that's what I always felt like something was missing, but I didn't know what.
Mm-hmm.
It was because they're with me. And yeah, I'm the middle sister and they're there, one on one.
I love that. I love that. And I loved how in the book that you were very descriptive about how your relationship was with both of them. Cause I think it's also, it was, it was, it was very sweet to see because like, listen, when you have siblings, sometimes you get into fights. They steal your stuff. They were stealing your stuff. Lipson, they were stealing your stuff. No, and of course because I've read the book, Judy's laughing, but that's what we do. That's what siblings do. And I thought it was very, very intentional and very sweet of you to just kind of go into that detail on the relationship that you had with each of them because you know, sometimes you're closer to one sibling than the other, or you just have chemistry with one another, but it's not like you hate each other. Liz always brings it up that they always, people always try to gauge how close you were to your sibling. Like, oh, well, you weren't that close with them. So, like kind of shrugs it off. And it's like, who cares? Like, that's none of your business. Like, that shouldn't even be a question. Like, why are you gauging that? And Liz is she's always making sure to make that known. Like, it doesn't matter if we were close or not. That's still my sibling and I lost them. And that's not fair. So, I thought it was very sweet of that. And I also wanted to say, I'm sorry for the passing of your dad as well. Um, I'm sure that, so obviously grief comes differently. How were you able to grieve your dad, or was this also a part of you doing the intense therapy?
Well, my dad was such an integral part of my life. Big, I mean, he kind of held the family together. And so his loss was huge. And then 2 years after that, I lost my best friend. So it was
Oh
like a
my
lot of
goodness.
losses. And it was kind of his losing him kind of forced me to grieve for Margie and Jane. Because I
Mm,
think many of us who have lost siblings get it, like another loss kind of triggers
yep,
the emotions of losing our siblings.
absolutely.
Um, so it was kind of the impetus that started me to do the journey to, finally grieve or mourn Margie and Jane. So and it was after his loss that I actually went to a support group, which I never did for my sisters, that
Wow.
started me on the writing journey. So it was kind of, set me in motion to where I
Wow.
am today.
Well, that's also like an awakening. Like I always see that as like an awakening. Like that's like something
Right,
to spark you to say, hey, it's
right,
time for you to do this, or it's time for you to do that.
right,
It's on your time, you know.
right.
What would you say to someone who is afraid to face their grief?
Um, I would say try to find one person,
Mm,
just one person that you can talk to about it, and to try to understand what grief is.
yeah.
And um, I think we all just need like you found Liz, like to have somebody that you can relate to. I mean, everybody, some people go to group, some people read, some people do whatever. But I think if you have just one person that you
Right.
can talk to, have have like a grief buddy with,
Right.
it's so important. And then to understand what grief is. And I think the fear of the unknown, because
Right.
and that what you're experiencing is okay, and to be
Mhm.
compassionate to yourself.
Absolutely. I think that that's very important to also that's such a key thing because it is it's like I don't know how to explain it. It's it's very hard to have compassion for yourself as you can have compassion for like others. Do you know? So um it's very important that you recognize like you've recognized that, but also it's very important that you say that because a lot of people just kind of they're so hard on themselves and it's just it is it's hard. Um I wanted
Just, it took
to
me a lot of years.
right. Absolutely. Um and then can joy and grief exist at the same time?
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
I have two examples of that.
sure.
Um, the first is so my birthday was the last time I saw my sister Jane, was to
Oh,
celebrate my 25th birthday, not on my actual birthday, but to celebrate. So my birthday always had a cloud.
mm,
And I just don't enjoy celebrating my birthday. And years later, I ran into one of her friends. She said to me, "You know what? Jane would want you to celebrate your birthday."
right. And then
So I started to,
right,
celebrate my birthday. The other thing is the birth of each of my grandchildren has brought me such immense joy. I think when we grieve so hard, it's because we love. And when we have joy, we love. And
right.
that's the common denominator, is the love.
I love that.
So that's the common denominator. So we
Yeah.
absolutely, grief and joy can absolutely. Um, and of course, these grandbabies have brought me such joy. And of course, I miss my sisters and I want them there and I want them to share in this and wish, we all had grandbabies to share, but that's not the reality.
Mm.
But I am so grateful. And, I see snippets of Margie and Jane in the four of them. Just,
I was just gonna
they're,
ask you, that was just I was actually going to ask you, do you do you see your sisters in the grandbaby sometimes? Or like some of the things that they do, you're like,
yeah, I mean, my eldest grandson is a dead ringer for Margie. Um, my second one sort of looks like Jane. My
wow,
granddaughter's named for Margie, and the baby was just born in February. So we haven't.
congratulations.
She's cute. So we can't tell yet.
Yeah. I mean, and then their personalities always change, but they always have something like about
Right.
them. They're like, some of the things like my daughter, she's 3, and she'll do things that remind me of my brother, like just some of the jokester. And I'm like, how are you such a joke? Like, how do you have such a personality in this little body? And some of the things she does, I'm like, is this my brother? Like, or like she's like, was Aunt Rosie your favorite? And I was like, where did you hear this from? And my Aunt Rosie, she definitely was one of my favorite aunts. Um, but I was the closest to her, and, my husband was very close to her, and actually, so was my dad, and she had passed, a few years, 2 years before my brother, and you could see, like, even some of the dance moves, I'm like, "Oh, look at you looking like Aunt Rosie." So it's like, you still keep their memory alive because you're seeing what they used to do as well, and again, very sweet to see? Um, I did wanna ask, what does it mean to carry the people we've lost?
I think that, like we've said throughout the
Mm.
podcast, is that I think they're always with us. And I think that I wouldn't be here talking to you today. I wouldn't have written the book. I wouldn't be out there skating, the shy introvert out there skating, performing, if Margie and Jane weren't with me. I mean, I kind of feel like they're kind of with me, cheering me on, giving me the courage to do all this. I mean, I don't think I could ever. I sometimes pinch myself like, who is this person doing all of this?
Yeah.
And I think they live on, like you said, like through your daughter and through my daughters, through my grandchildren, like snippets of them that I think that's how we carry. And, we honor them every day because they're always in our hearts. And for me, doing the fundraiser and honoring them and sharing about them and talking about them and telling their stories and that they're not forgotten. And that's how we carry them, is what I believe.
Can you tell our audience more about the organization and how they can find it and so on and so forth?
So, yeah, it's Celebration of Sisters and it supports Mass General Hospital. And the fundraiser, it's Celebration of Sisters. It's the same title as the book. It supports the Eating Disorder Center at Mass General Hospital. I started in 2011, put it on pause in 2022, but I'm bringing it back this year because it's going to be 45 years that Jane's gone. Going to be 70, so
What?
do it.
What? Girl,
Yeah.
what? Come on now. Come through. Come on, Lipson. You look amazing. You look phenomenal. I would never have guessed. Never had guessed. You didn't even have to tell our guest that, but you look fabulous. And I hope that
Yes,
you
so
feel as fabulous as you look because
thank
70
you.
on the ice. Woo. I'm only
Yeah.
41 and my knees are cracking. You know what I'm saying? Like you are just all in all, just you are an amazing soul. Holy moly, good for you.
Yeah, so last year I had a tough year with all the birthdays and the anniversaries, so
Yeah.
doing it this year to give a focus. So, yeah, don't get so excited. I don't do jumps or anything. I just kind of go out there and skate and do my thing.
Listen, you're still, I mean, right? Like you have to be, you
My
gotta
skate
have
hurt.
direction. Yeah, you have to have direction. I mean, obviously, once you get the hang of the skates and all the goodness behind it, but wait, you're not doing like the triple twirl and all this other craziness that these people are doing, the twirls and whatnot. No, not your cup of tea.
No, 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 no.
I kid. And like I told you, I grew up in that era and I thought it was, I mean, more power to them, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna break myself, like, and I'm always even watching hockey players, I always feel like, what are you guys doing over there? I went to one hockey game, and I have to tell you, I went to one hockey game and it was the Devils. And I was like, this is the only New Jersey team that we have left. So I'm gonna go for the Devils. And they were just like this fighting and ball. And I was like, yeah, let's go. Like, and I'm like, wait a minute, what if they're fighting and like they get like hurt by the blades? Like, how do you guys do it? Like, I think I had too many questions and I was like, guys, just be careful. I mean, if you want to fight, just take the shoes off and go outside, be the men, go fight. But I always find it very fascinating when it comes to the skates because I think, you know, um, just those tricks that they do is how much time and energy is put into that to perfect it. But I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful that you were able to come on our show, and to do this episode and to share your story with us. And then how can our audience reach out to you or follow you and follow your journey?
My website is judylipson.org. Instagram is at CLEB Sisters, and on Substack, Judy Lipson.
Oh, amazing. Your Substack is getting a lot of is starting to become much more popular. I mean, I'm a Reddit girl, but I mean, it's two different platforms. But Substack is really becoming more popular. I've been seeing a lot more people writing on there. So, I want our audience to be able to go check it out, check out Judy, check out and make sure that you purchase her book. I mean, it was so well written, especially if you have sibling loss and just how she went into depth on just talking about the relationship with her sisters and going through the journey of grieving. I thought was very profounding. And I also want to thank you so much, Judy, for coming on and sharing. And to our audience, you know where to find us. We are on Instagram, we are on TikTok. You can see us streaming on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us.